today is every self-employed person's worst nightmare day. It is
Happy
tax day.
tax day.
It's the worst.
You have so much hair now.
Well, I got my extensions in. I had an audition to shoot this morning.
They look very nice.
I got makeup on too. Look at me making an effort today.
I see you. You're like rocking it out. I'm like semi-drunk and wearing day braids, so, someone has to put on.
I had to get this thing shot by 10 a.m. and I was cursing the whole time I was getting ready because it's a role for a little bit of a younger person. So I'm like, quarantine, my skin has looked terrible. My hair has not been good. I haven't had my extensions in. So it's been
Dude, I relate. No, I got the weirdest, I think it was like a backhanded compliment not too long ago.
Oh, okay. What was that?
So when we were breaking down my theater, like I was telling you about, I was the only woman on a team of all men, which was like mostly fine because two of them were like people who do theater stuff.
Right.
But then the other guys were just like assistants who we'd brought in to move from another department. And I had this guy, we're like all holding like pieces of the lighting truss. And, we're waiting to load him into the truck or whatever. And he's just like, so is like your dad or like your mom in the military? And I'm like, bro, I have a whole ass husband. I'm like, how old do you think I am? Because like, no. And so it was the weirdest thing because I was like, to ask that question, I feel like you think I'm like 17. And I was like,
that kind of seems like it.
For sure not good enough for you to confuse the two, because I am not 17. And quarantine has not made me look any closer to 17.
Look, with quarantine, we're all looking like our finest slug selves. And I think, in a way, we kind of need that.
Yeah. I think we've been living
to
doing like
any effort into myself.
No. I fixed my eyebrows for the first time like a month ago. And I was like, wow, there's still a person in here.
So I'm a huge BoxyCharm addict.
Yeah.
I get the base box in the Luxy and the premium subscription.
Wow, they should for sure sponsor us then.
The premium only comes the Luxy only comes once every 3 months in place of the base box, but I get 2 boxes a month.
Nice.
Right? Because it actually saves me money because I'm always expected to show up or be on camera with like quality products, and certain products you buy at the drugstore, they just do not look good on camera. They cake up under bright lights, they melt, things like that. Yep. So I always get these designer products at great prices and an amazing skincare routine. Mm-hmm. Well, for the past, how long have we been in quarantine now? You're in Germany. You don't even know, but it's a long time.
Yeah.
So I've just been accumulating this supply of makeup, and I haven't touched it.
Yeah.
I've touched it maybe twice this month. I have a huge Rubbermaid container because, like, I'll give stuff out that maybe I've tried once and don't like, or if I get something that I feel like isn't for my skin type or skin tone, or is a color I wouldn't wear, I put it in people's stockings or gift bags and stuff. Yeah. And I've got this massive thing that I haven't even messed with right now. So,
ugh. Yeah, no, like I said, I did my eyebrows and I put on mascara for the first time, and Darnell was just like, hey.
Oh.
It's nice to see you. And I was like, are you good? And he's like, yeah, no, you're just like, and I'm like, I put on makeup for the first time in literally like 6 months. And he's like, well, you're always beautiful. And I was like, good answer.
You're like, look, dude, we're married and it's quarantine.
Yeah. But no, within 24 hours, like bathed and put on an amount of makeup. And he was just like, whoa. So it's nice that at least quarantine has set the bar so much lower.
I feel like in buying the beauty supplies and stuff, it's kind of, I would equate it to the illusion of productivity.
Yeah.
So like when you buy office supplies and you feel like you're getting a lot done, but really you haven't done anything but buy office supplies or back to school supplies. You haven't really done anything other than that, but you feel like, yeah, I've got my life together. And I feel like that's what happens when my BoxyCharm box comes. And it's
That's
supposed
fair.
to come today. So if the doorbell rings, you're going to see me just sprint out.
I love it.
Because it's really hot and I don't want stuff to melt. And also, their pop-up sale is today. So I'm refreshing on this because they've got some good stuff in it this time for super marked down.
Nice. Yeah, I will say, like, I haven't bought any, like, makeup, except I did buy lipstick from Lip Slut last month because they were having, like, all of their proceeds were going to Black Lives Matter related causes. And I was like, oh yeah, let me get some fuck Trump that goes to Black Lives Matter. If you're not familiar with Lip Slut, they're an amazing company that all of their products go to different causes, and they're all very left-leaning. Like, they had a color that was called Fuck Hollywood, and it was to help with victim advocacy when, like, all the Weinstein stuff was coming out.
Oh, that's great.
They had a Fuck Trump. They had, like, an Notorious RBG, I think, that was, like, for women in politics. I mean, it was just, they do a lot of really good work that I'm like, you know what? I think maybe I need some lipstick right now.
I love it. Yeah. What color did you get?
I don't remember because it hasn't come yet, because they got bought out within like a day of that sale, and so they're like on back order.
So
yeah, so
everything's shipping's delayed. And
yeah, and so I'm happy to wait for it, because everywhere that I go, that anyone else but like Darnell, who sees me in like stained fucking t-shirts, they don't see my lips, so I have nowhere really to wear lipstick.
Oh my god, I just blanked out. I feel like you could make a compilation of me saying, like, oh, I just forgot what I was saying, because, okay, look, people, I work overnights, and when we record this, sometimes it's hard for me to be all there. With Ruby in Germany, our window to get this recording done is always not the best for either of us. So.
Which is helpful, because like neither of us are truly in our prime. You're a little before your prime, I'm a little after my prime. So we're both kind of on the same cognitive function.
We're just doing what we can.
Yeah. And if you want more, then stop listening.
Oh man, I had something really cool to tell you this week, but I'm blanking out on it right now. So I'm hoping that as we continue on, I will remember.
If it comes back, just like cut in. Just like, no matter what's being said, it could be like, then this little girl died and became a ghost, and you could be like, fuck that.
Oh, by the way.
Tell you. Yeah.
Oh, what is up with Zach Baggins and the
GW Zoo?
Yes! Let's talk about that for a second. Okay, I think that was part of it. That was one of the things.
Okay.
Yay.
Yeah, so I sent you that Instagram post earlier this week.
Indeed, yes.
Because I have no idea what's going on. So if anyone's unfamiliar and you don't follow the bag man himself, Zach Baggins /
We don't blame you, but it is a gigantic source of entertainment.
It's a gem. You really should, just for the lulz, as 2006 me would have said. And 2020 me just did say. But yeah, he posted this thing that was like, we had to suspend our filming because they maybe found that the dogs maybe sniffed out human remains at the gator pit in the Joe Exotic Tiger Zoo.
And Rue and I rejoiced, because if that isn't something to make your week, who do you think it is? Do you have a theory?
Okay, so before theories, there are questions.
Of course.
And my questions are, what is Zach doing there?
Okay, we already know what Zach Baggins is doing there. He's trying to ride off of Tiger King's success. Yeah, and that is it. Zach Baggins is a fame whore.
But before we knew that there were remains on the property,
he was there, investigating.
Exactly, which means that, like, and I have watched the 10 episode special several times at this point of the Tiger King. It never really is it mentioned that there is ghostly activity happening at the GW Zoo. So what Zach was hoping to find is absurd and a wonderful bless up to him, and probably the entire Travel Channel, which rides on his back, that some remains were found while he was there.
Do you think they're really celebrating that fact? Because they were probably already making it a stretch that it was haunted to begin with, but now that there might be human remains, they're like, oh yeah, now we're in.
Of course. I am hopeful. So, unfortunately, for anyone who has watched the show, you're aware that some really tragic things have happened there. There was someone who died by suicide at the zoo, which is awful. And also, a lot of animals have passed away there. So, I mean, I guess that's what he's looking for. To make dark matters light, I hope that the entire episode is just Zach Baggins trying to get an EVP of a ghost tiger by, like, sexy Austin Powers. Rawr, baby, rawr.
One thing for sure is to be said about this, and that's that you and I will be tuning into this together via my Hulu Live account over 100%. Zoom, watching this. We're gonna pop popcorn. We're gonna make it a night.
It'll be like a supposedly podcast Instagram Live watch party event extraordinaire.
And let me tell you what, we're gonna make the Zach Baggins drinking game. Although we don't endorse drinking yourself into a pit, but if you'd like to drink a little bit, maybe every time Zach tries to get a tiger EVP, you take a sip of something. The more I talk to you on Zoom and I'm seeing video, I think I drew this eyebrow on too high.
I was going to say, I think that my left, I believe your right side is a little more glamorous. It looks a little darker from my perspective, but you're still gorgeous, darling.
Thank you. I'm not great at eyebrows. I can't figure them out. I either go way too dark on both of them or I draw one weird. Both of my eyebrows are kind of different shaped, so trying to make them look the same is like getting the same kind of winged eyeliner, which is to say fucking possible.
Eyebrows are the one thing I'm good at. That's
like my eyebrows.
I suck at doing most makeup, but I can do some banging brows.
Oh, I can do other stuff, just not eyebrows.
Together we're a whole face. If this whole podcasting thing doesn't work out, man.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you think he's gonna try to get alligator EVPs?
I hope he does it in God rest his soul, Steve Irwin's voice. I hope he's like, crikey, mate.
Crikey! Well, I talked to a gator.
Yes, that's what I want.
What sound does the gator make?
And then I hope it's just Aaron, just like, I don't want to be here.
Okay, so my theories on these human remains. Mm-hmm. Christy and I talked about this a little bit because right after you sent me that article, she sent it to me later.
I saw that, yeah.
So, she sent it to you too, right?
She sent it to our group chat, I think, yeah.
Anyway, Christy suspects that it isn't anyone Joe Exotic killed, that mayhaps it is somebody that the new owner who's really freaking sketchy.
Oh, yeah.
I really kind of hope that it's Carol's husband. Okay. That would be an interesting twist of events.
That would be a very interesting twist.
Probably not going to be that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's always the third option was some idiot was climbing over trying to see the animals too close. Gator pit, nobody knew what happened to this person.
Yeah, my biggest hope, and I have zero absolutely negative 5,000 faith in Zach, is I just hope he's so weird. He's just so weird about suicide, as we've learned from years of Ghost Adventures. I can already see how bad this is going to get for the way that he handles that.
He's not the most politically correct when it comes to depression or the taking of one's life or anything like that.
Yeah, and so that's my biggest, like, as much as, like, I was, like, here for the lulz, I was also like, oh my god, someone did die by suicide there, very publicly, on camera. I hope that Zach doesn't make that as horrible as he's known to do.
Did he, though? Because in listening to a lot of different interviews from the Tiger King, the person we're talking about is one of Joe's husbands that was technically straight, but I guess with Joe for whatever reason, Joe Exotic. And the accounts vary. Some people said that he was really depressed for an extended time before this happened.
Right.
Other people said that he was so used to just pranking people by pulling the gun that they think that he honestly didn't know that the safety was off. So it could be a terrible accident. We do know he was on drugs a lot of the time, so I could easily see him not knowing that the safety was off and just thinking he was being funny. And
regardless, I mean, he died under
he
his own
died in a very
hands.
tragic way.
In a very tragic way, yeah. And Zach is not known for his couth in those regards.
Zach is couthless.
100%.
He's a couthless man.
And we love him, and he shouldn't sue us because we have given a lot of money to the Travel Channel in our watchings over the years. So it's all
we are huge fans.
Yeah.
It might not sound like it.
Nope.
But we are.
Definitely.
We are. So what did you bring to the table today? Because I'm so excited to hear.
Okay. Am I going first tonight?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna make you go first tonight because I'm doing something a little different. I feel like I say that every time too, but I'll put it out there. I'm doing something different, and I kind of feel like it's a good message to close out on.
Right on.
Yeah.
First though, before we get into that, I want to say happy 10th episode.
Is it our 10th?
It's our 10th.
Happy 10th episode, Rue.
Yeah, we've done a thing for 10 episodes.
You know what this means?
What?
It means I need to grab another Coke so we can do a cheers or something. Just
hey!
Hey! And I'm gonna get a caramel or something.
Ooh.
Hang on, you can make some noise music for when time passes, but it'll take me a second. All right, and go. I'm back. Do you have something to toast with?
I've just been beatboxing. I just have water, which is like a sin, but I'm drunk enough that my blood alcohol content will toast for me.
Sweetie, think like Jesus and turn that water to wine.
You know,
Happy 10th episode, baby.
Happy 10th episode. Clean.
And I remembered what I wanted to tell you.
Oh, even better.
Okay, so this is a reason I'm a little depressed this week. Okay. Well, Christy and I have been ordering all of our groceries through Shipt and having them delivered. Mm-hmm. Just trying to kind of stay away from going out to the grocery store and doing our best to limit contact with people, etc. Anyway, so I text her my ship list, and she puts in the order for both of us, and then we divide up the groceries and the money and all that later. Mm-hmm. Well, I came home after she had received the ship order, and she says to me, "Oh, I didn't know what kind of cake to get you, so I just got you carrot cake." And I said, "Why'd you get me a cake?" And she said, "You put cake on your grocery list." I put Coke on my grocery list. So she ordered me a full cake and didn't even bat an eye as to why I put a cake on my grocery list, which speaks to how badly I've been eating lately.
Quarantine, baby.
Right. She just looked at the list and was like, "Oh, Jesse wants a cake. Okay." And part of me is like, you didn't think for a moment, like, are you doing okay, Jess? Are you having an event?
I like the lack of judgment that exists in your household, though, that she was like, you know what? That's not my fucking business. If my roommate wants a cake, that bitch gets
I'm going to get her a cake. No, and much kudos for her for doing that. Although she did read it wrong. It was Coke. But I did think it's hilarious and made me feel a little bit bad about myself that, you know, I have been eating so poorly that she did think I just ordered a full-size cake for myself and didn't bat an eye, but...
Do you like carrot cake? Are you getting use out of this object?
I like chocolate cake. I like vanilla cake. I like Boston cream pie that's kind of a cake.
Okay.
Kind of don't like carrot cake. But that wasn't her fault. She ordered a quad cake that had different types, and then the lady substituted it, which...
Gotcha.
Why carrot cake?
I was going to say, because, like, I like carrot cake. Cream cheese frosting is my favorite type of frosting because I'm not a huge sweets person. But that
if I am going to order a whole cake, it's not going to have vegetables in it.
Well, yeah, that was my thing is, like, carrot cake is a bold... No one specified, I'm going to go carrot. Like, that is a distinct choice you've made.
Very distinct choice.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I've been eating so poorly that nobody batted an eye when I ordered a cake, even though I didn't order cake.
All right, well.
And then on top of that, it was carrot cake, and there was no cake to be eaten once I found out there was a cake, so that was sad. But nice of her not to judge me when she thought I did order a cake.
Judgment-free cake zone, man.
Did I tell you my stepfather cut his fingers off?
You did. Is there an update? You told us like mid-story last week.
Yeah. I haven't been able to talk to them since that. Like, I called my mom and she's just been really tired and like said for me to call her today. So there is no update other than fingers are still gone. So.
Oh man.
I know. It's been a weird week.
Yeah.
My mom was very adamant about, Jesse, I had to go find the finger in the dirt.
Oh.
And it was gross. And part of me is kind of like, I don't know. Here's my thing on that.
Okay.
I feel like I wouldn't be that bad at the job of finding a finger if someone cut a finger off. I'd just be like, bloop, bloop, because I'm around so much special effects stuff all the time. Like, a couple of weeks ago, I saw my own head get cut off and roll to my feet with my face looking at me. So it doesn't really bother me, and I work in healthcare a little bit, so it's not that big of a deal for me to just go, zip, wash hands, call good. Do you think you could ever pick up a body part?
Oh yeah, because I've worked in healthcare as well. I mean, I've got some intimate trauma with dead bodies. Like,
what?
Oh, I mean, like, I watched my mom die when I was a kid.
You just dropped that like a bomb, girl.
It was like 15 years ago.
Okay.
I mean, it was expected. She was like super sick with cancer. Like, it was a whole thing. But no, so I'm very desensitized to death and body parts and all that stuff, just because I'm like, yeah, it's a fact of life, and I've seen it enough to where it to me is just a thing that happens. It's horrible and it's not ideal, but it's something that the shock value for me isn't quite there, where I think that's what for a lot of people is so, oh my god, a finger. It's like, yeah, no, fingers.
Yeah, but for me, like, if the person's alive and standing there and it's just their finger in the dirt, that's not as bad. Like, I don't know, as opposed to, like, I wouldn't want to necessarily pick up a decapitated head.
Oh yeah,
or pick up, like, somebody's spleen just laying there. But like a finger, I feel like I could do that.
Oh, okay. So, and this is going to be such a long intro. I don't really care. It's our podcast and it's our 10th episode. We can do whatever we want.
We can do it.
As we talk about dead bodies, randonauting?
What?
Randonauting.
What is that?
Something we're both technically too old to know about, but I have recently gotten on the TikTok and have learned about it, but I mostly learned about it through, and I want to shout them out, one of my favorite podcasts, and that's Why We Drink. Covered randonauting as their story last week, and I have become absolutely taken by it. So randonauting it started as like a Reddit thing, as all good things in our world do.
Okay.
And then became an
app. Bad.
Well, yeah. And then it became an app. And so apparently it works through kind of like quantum physics / like law of attraction. You set an intention and then you say like, and I'm butchering this because I haven't done it myself personally, but just my understanding. And then you like decide how far away from your present location you're willing to go. You set an intention and then you like click go, and it puts a spot on a map within that, like however many miles, kilometers, whatever that you're willing to travel. And like you get there and you're supposed to be able to identify something that's like lines up with that intention you set. Like one of my friends did it with the intention of love, and the location took them to a house that had like heart-shaped curtains in the windows.
Interesting and creepy.
Yeah, but then there are, of course, some teenagers who I can't say that I would have been much better, who are doing like the intention of like death. And literally some teenagers, and I think it was, I don't even remember where it was, somewhere in the US, literally found a suitcase that contained a human body. And like, yeah, like they happened upon the suitcase and they were like, we found this suitcase off the pier, like kind of in the rocks underneath the pier. And they like approached it and they're like, it smells really weird. And
my first thought is always dead body when I see a trash bag on the side of the road, when it's a suitcase, when if there's anything on the side of the road, I'm just like, dead body.
Yeah, and they're like, what if it's like full of money or something? Because I don't remember what their intention was, but they unzip it and it's trash bags, and apparently the smell of human decomp just like hit them, and they're like, we're gonna call the police. And I watched their TikTok of it, and you're watching them they don't show anything gruesome, but you see the trash can or the trash bag in the suitcase, and you hear them on the phone with 911, and then they show like the article that's like local teens find body.
Wow. How would you do with finding a dead body?
So the weird kid in me was always like, I'm gonna find a body, because I've always been so interested in the solving part of true crime. There's nothing to me that's more devastating than not having answers.
Right.
Like Naya Rivera has just been found dead, the star from Glee. And to me, it was so heartbreaking when she hadn't been found yet. And it was like she was presumed to have passed away, but there was no body. And it's like the lack of closure to me is the hardest part. So even like as a kid, I was a weird murderino, true crime obsessed kid. And I was like, man, to be able to provide that closure to a family. And so I think I always kind of like romanticize the idea of like being on that 4-H Girl Scout.
By me. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And I think that's kind of where it comes from, though, is that like maybe I could be a helper and Harriet the Spy solve a crime, but in reality I can't imagine the trauma of actually.
I think I would be freaked out at first.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how I do. That's one of those things I don't feel like you could ever possibly know until
I don't think you can.
That situation.
Well, and because, even as like the weird kid who's like, I want to solve a crime, you can't truly have that intention when you stumble upon it. None of the joggers that find trash bags full of body parts are ever like setting the intention of, I'm going to go find a corpse today. So you're not in the headspace. You're thinking about like, I'm on my morning jog and I have to go home and get the kids ready for school and I have to pay my taxes today because it's tax day. You're not in the mental.
Why did you have to remind me about that?
It's that or find a body, Jessie.
I would take find a body. I'm not joking. Hands down, anytime. Okay. Taxes or find a body.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, so I think that's part of it is just the shell shock of like, oh, there's now a body. This is now a thing I have to deal with. But I think about it in terms of like, I can conceptualize what would happen if I got into a car accident today. And like, I was fine, but like my car was total. It's like, oh, the paperwork sucks. But then when it actually happens, you're like, fuck, I have to do all of this at once. Like, it's so different to conceptualize. And I don't think you can truly be like, if I found a body, I would just XYZ.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Like, I think unless in practice, it's so different.
I would agree with that. So what'd you bring today?
Okay, so I have a conspiracy.
Ooh.
So it's one that you've probably heard before.
That's cool. I'm bringing you some stuff you've maybe not heard about stuff you've heard before.
Oh, okay.
We'll see.
So this one's pretty popular and it's pretty well known to be debunked, but just enjoy going on this ride with me.
I am buckling up for safety, motherfucker.
So today we're talking about the Russian sleep experiment.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, shit. Okay, that's dope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get into it.
All right.
I have frequent troubles with insomnia, so I am all about hearing about the sleep experiment.
Well, unless you're doing meth, you shouldn't worry too much about this one.
I am not, so I'm in the clear.
There you go.
Perfect.
All right. So, in the late 1940s, Russia developed a stimulant to help keep their troops awake longer in order to be more efficient soldiers. This was on par with the German use of Pervitin and the American use of Benzedrine during World War II, which was respectively basically meth and speed. So they were just drugging the troops to help them stay up and fight baddies.
That doesn't sound like a good plan to me, because sleepless people, as somebody who is often frequently sleepless, we function at a much lower level than your average human being mentally sometimes.
And that's us sleepless and like staring at the pillow or staring at the ceiling, not sleepless on meth.
Pumped full of drugs.
Yeah.
And So I was on Adderall for a while because I have ADD, and they were really trying to figure that out when I was younger. And sometimes the Adderall, it would make me like a different person. I had to get off of it because I didn't like the level of creativity I lost being on it, and the fact that I'd hone in and focus on such weird and random things. But I can also tell you, like, that's kind of, it's a similar style drug to meth, except prescription. And I don't feel like I functioned well at all. I felt like I was more emotional. I was jumpy. I was twitchy.
Yeah.
So I can't see that meth would make people better soldiers.
Nope.
Did it?
I mean, we won.
Valid. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a mic drop, and
I mean,
I want to know more about this conspiracy theory, but I also feel
that
like
part's 100% real. That part's 100% real. That is not the conspiracy. American and British troops for sure drug their people. Yup.
Well, I know that the U.S. did.
Yeah, it's like a known fact. Benzedrine and Pervitin, yeah, they for sure use those.
Okay.
Also, I do want to add a caveat that, like, work with your personal doctor to get your personal meds suited out and do what works best for you.
But probably not meth.
Well, not meth, but no, I mean in terms of like the Adderall type thing. It's like, hey,
yeah, of course.
You, cool.
Yeah, no, I had to go to more just learning coping strategies and figuring that whole out within myself and not being on medication. But aside from the fact of that is the fact that I did develop this long sleeplessness because that I still deal with today.
Yeah. Yikes. Well, don't do meth.
Yeah, no meth.
Okay. So Russia was working to develop a stimulant that didn't have the same crash that the drugs used by the Germans and Americans resulted in. So that's a really great utopia that you can just do meth and not tweak out, I guess. But Russia was determined to figure that out. The tests were going to be run on prisoners of war, which 110,000 million % goes against all ethics. But
and probably the Geneva Convention as well.
Yeah, for sure. But they just kind of loopholed that. They're like, they're prisoners of war. It doesn't, whatever.
Ugh, disgusting.
Absolutely. So the test area was set up for 5 people, or test subjects, which was a sealed room which would allow researchers to pump in the stimulant as a breathable gas while monitoring oxygen levels.
It's always gas.
Always gas. In the test area, there were dried food rations, beds without bedding, running water, as well as 1 toilet. The test area also came equipped with a microphone and cameras for the researchers to be able to observe the subjects. So it was kind of just this chamber, very barren, almost like a prison cell, that had, kind of everything that they would need. They made the beds very uncomfortable because this is obviously a don't sleep situation, but they still did provide cots. Technically, there were windows, but they were more porthole style, so like kind of circles drilled into the chamber, and they were made of 5-inch thick glass, which you could barely even see shadows through.
Well, that just sounds like isolation, and they're going to pump you full of drugs, and there's nothing comfy around. That's terrible.
Literally. So the subjects have agreed that the test is to stay awake for 30 days. They were also falsely, this was never a thing.
Whoa. Wait.
Okay.
30 days.
Yeah, a month.
A month. Dude, the most I've ever gone is 4 days, and I can tell you I am an emotional wreck. I cry if I drop a pin.
Literally.
I hallucinate stuff. Last time I went 4 days without sleep, my roommate literally had to take me and make sure I got into bed. Yeah. And, like, I can't even imagine 30 days.
Yeah. I've gone, I think, 3 days, which is 10% of what this study was.
Oh,
and
man.
And like you, I'm just destroyed.
Useless. Yes.
Yeah. So these 5 guys agree to stay awake for 30 days, and they were falsely told that if they were successful in staying awake for all 30 days, they would earn their freedom.
I'm not even going to comment on that. That is freaking
manipulation at its finest.
I just have no faith in humanity anymore, and it's getting kind of hard.
Yep. Every day is a struggle. Yeah.
Okay.
So everything's chill for like the first 3 days, as you and I've said. Like, you're pretty all right. Your cognitive function starts to diminish a little bit. They're kind of getting to know each other, chilling. Around the 4th day, as these dudes are just chilling in their bunker, their conversations start to get a little deeper and darker, and they start to talk about the horrors and traumas of war, which does not meld well.
So they're pumped up on meth in an isolation chamber.
It's supposed to be not meth. It's supposed to be meth without the side effects.
So they're pumped up on meth adjacent.
Yeah.
In an isolation chamber in a foreign country where they've been held as prisoners of war. And now they're discussing traumatic horror war stories. This can't possibly go well.
Yeah, you're not missing anything.
Awake for 4 days. Oh, man.
On board. So by day 5, the men in the study begin to show psychosis. And
of course they do.
And they're talking to themselves as well as to things that aren't actually there. They become paranoid, and they begin to try and speak covertly directly to the researchers by whispering about each other into the microphone.
Ooh.
Basically, like, he did this thing, and you need to let me out of here because he doesn't, like, he's crazy. Or
Oh, so paranoia.
a lot of
Okay.
paranoia was happening. So
Can't say I blame them in an
yeah.
isolation chamber, meth adjacent, 5 days no sleep.
Well, and even not
Foreign country.
meth adjacent,
Prisoner of war.
me going without sleep. I'm really quick to have auditory hallucinations. Like, that is my go-to. Like, kids are giggling, and so I can't even imagine being in a bunker with 5 dudes post-war. I mean, this is the 40s, so the conversations of PTSD don't even exist yet.
So I gotta ask, while we're on this, as a wife of a soldier, I know we're not Russia, but the U.S. government has had histories of doing things like this. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so, I mean, my biggest thing is it's typically not the military actually doing these studies, so I have a much bigger issue with the government at large. Because that's usually much more of like an Area 51 thing, which is where like service members protect the researchers. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like it's not even in our wheelhouse. Obviously, it's so fucked up, and human testing at any degree should be handled with the utmost care, compassion, and regard for safety. I mean, we have the Geneva Convention, which apparently police officers aren't held to, as we've learned in the last month, by using rubber bullets and tear gas and all of these things, which are actually illegal under the Geneva Convention. But, I mean, we have these things in place because human beings are still human beings. No matter if you're a prisoner of war, no matter what you've done, you still deserve a modicum of human decency and respect.
Some humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and I mean, obviously in the last 80 years, things have changed in terms of paper trails, and it's a lot harder to just, we're going to just take these prisoners and do whatever we want with them. But it does still exist. I mean, the prison industrial complex is it's such a fucking mess. I mean, I look back to a couple years ago when California was basically on fire. The wildfires were really bad. They demanded that inmates, people who were incarcerated, act as volunteer firefighters under the, if you don't volunteer to risk your life and get paid like 32 cents an hour, you will be put in solitary confinement. And it's like, you're not a trained firefighter. Firefighters go to school to learn how to safely do that. Prisoners are not indentured servants, and that's in our country what prisoners have become. And so it's just it's a new form of slavery.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
absolutely it is.
That's my soapbox. If you're interested in reading more on that topic, especially about the prison industrial complex, I do recommend The New Jim Crow. I think it's The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander. It's a fantastic read. So, off the soapbox and back on to the story. Thank you for our commercial break. So by day 5, they're starting to have this paranoia, and they are kind of whispering stuff into the microphone, trying to directly talk to the researchers. The researchers aren't too worried. They're like, okay, yeah, this is just a pretty typical sign of sleep deprivation, but they're unsure how much this effect had to do with the stimulant versus exhaustion itself. And so the soapbox I'll go on here is, this is why the scientific method exists, because if this were a well-done, researched study, there would be a group of 5 guys not receiving the stimulant just to see how they react. How long can they go without sleep? What side effects do they exhibit? And then you can kind of cancel out, okay, so they went crazy and started talking to the microphone too, even though they weren't receiving the gas.
That's probably just insomnia and sleeplessness after 5 days. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so the fact that they didn't do that means that this is not a very credible experiment. So it's hard to tell what's the meth adjacent substance and what's just 5 dudes who have seen war and are really tired.
Truth.
On day 9, one of the men begins to just ceaselessly scream. It's believed that he screamed so much that he tore his own vocal cords, because eventually he just squeaked like a chew toy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not ideal. After a few more days, things fell silent, and the researchers could no longer see the men on cameras. The oxygen levels still indicated that there were 5 living men in the room, though.
They couldn't see them on cameras.
Yeah, because, I mean, and again, this is the 1940s, so camera technology wasn't what it is today.
Of
They
course
didn't have
not.
it in all the angles, so there were corners and floor.
No, and we're talking about cameras that probably aren't PTZ at that point in time. No pan tilt zoom. No, they're going to be static CCTV at best. And if we're talking about a kind of an iron chamber, already your connectivity is not going to be potentially that great. Talking about 1940s equipment. That being said, since they are sealed in this room and they are measuring oxygen levels, it can be possible that some of the cameras have become steamy and therefore blocked.
Yeah.
Do we know why the cameras were unable to see things? Had they taken the cameras down? Had they done something to the cameras? Or do we just not know?
Just keep listening.
All right.
Okay.
Did they smear feces on them?
So at this point...
You laugh, but I feel like that was a confirmation.
At this point, researchers felt like they had no option but to go into the chamber and check on the men. The first humanly decent thing they do the whole story.
After how many frickin' days? 5?
We're at like 15. I think we're at like 12 at this point. So they announced on the intercom that they were going to be coming in, stating that they were just going to come in and check the microphones, and that the men were to step away from the door, lie flat on the floor, or else they'd be shot. But if they complied, one man would earn immediate freedom.
So now you're going to kind of make them turn on each other, too. Wonderful.
Well, and also, like...
And it's probably a lie.
At this point, we're in, like, a Saw game. Like, it's fucking Jigsaw, like, one of you will be guaranteed immediate freedom. Like, this is not humanly decent at all.
Not at all.
So, to the researcher who said that, one of the men responded, "We no longer want to be freed."
Oh, that's dark.
Yeah.
Then, see, I feel like there's a movie in here, and that now they want revenge.
I mean, wouldn't you?
Of course. Hell yeah.
So, the researchers obviously kind of freaked out at this, and they wondered if maybe the gas had just been too addictive, but they still kind of felt like they needed to go inside and check out what was happening. So they ventilated the room to remove the stimulant before going inside. The men almost immediately began to scream and beg for more of the gas, confirming the researchers' suspicion that they were now addicted.
15 days.
Yeah,
I could see that.
All right, so officially day 15, the gas has had a chance to ventilate out, so the researchers feel safe to go in. And again, I feel like true scientific method would have been putting the researchers in a suit and not stopping the gas, because if you wanted to have 30 days of unbroken gas exposure, then you would have just made sure that the researchers went in like a HEPA-filtered suit. But also,
look, we already know that they're basically kids with magnifying glass torturing
100%. 100%.
They're not. This has nothing to do with science and has more to do with power play.
Oh, yeah.
And what ifs, not scientific hypothesis. Okay.
So they find that one man is dead.
Of natural causes, or did they murder him?
Not only is he dead, but he's been torn apart, and it looks as though part of his body has been eaten.
Were they feeding them?
Yeah, I mean, they had, like, rationed out, like, MRE type food, and they went in with enough for more than the month for the 5 of them.
Oh. Oh, man. It's getting to be some bath salts type stuff.
It gets rough. So, in addition to the guy being dead, the 4 remaining men have chunks of flesh torn from their limbs, their fingertips are gone in some cases, and their faces have been clawed to shreds, many of the wounds appearing to be self-inflicted. You have to make noise in addition to the face. This is an auditory-based platform.
I don't have anything to that. I just... that's the best I got, Rue, on that one. Oh, my God.
Yep. So the men had... It gets pretty rough. Just gonna put that warning out. If you don't like gruesome stuff, maybe skip ahead 30 seconds.
Okay, look, I'm just gonna say this to our listeners, all 15 or 16 of you, hopefully, after last episode. If I don't react to something, it isn't because I'm not reacting. I am just dumbfounded.
Oh, dude, her face is like high-key dumbstruck.
Appalled. Yeah. Just So if I don't say anything, Rue, feel free to keep going, but all you in your mind make up the most dumbfounded, shocked, appalled face you can, and just insert that in your brain holes.
There you go. So, trigger warning for right now. The men...
Trigger warning now?
Well,
we didn't get a trigger... Okay, go.
I mean, this is the part that it gets pretty gruesome. So the men had torn flesh and musculature away from their chests, leaving their lungs exposed, and it appeared that they had done this to themselves. Internal organs were arranged on the floor, and living tissue had been removed for what seemed to be consumption at a later time.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's not good.
I'm doing the face.
You're doing the face, yeah. So obviously the researchers freaked the fuck out and shut the door and called for backup. When soldiers arrived to remove the men, they attacked them, tearing out their throats. One of the subjects bled out, his heart stopped, but his screaming continued. A doctor suffered from broken bones. 5 soldiers died in the removal process, and a few more died by suicide later on. Once out of the chamber, the remaining 3 subjects were injected with high levels of morphine, but still fought back until they were eventually able to be restrained and sedated. One of the subjects went into surgery with the intent to put his organs back in place, but he died from the amount of anesthesia that had to be given to sedate him. His autopsy showed 9 broken bones and torn muscles throughout his body. The second subject was operated on without anesthetic, because they didn't want to kill him, and the doctors sewed the organs and grafted the skin. The third patient, who also was not anesthetized, laughed throughout his entire reconstruction and continuously pleaded that they would give him more of the gas. A former KGB officer suggested that they just put the men back on the gas because the issues started after the withdrawal set in. So that's what they did. The 3 men were put back into the chamber with the gas, where they responded well for a while. The EEG machines monitoring their brain activity started to go crazy and then abruptly just stopped. One of the men died. When the researchers went in to examine the body, one of them shot the commander and the last remaining subject, shouting, "I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you. What are you? I must know." The subject who'd been shot but was not dead responded, "Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds each night. We are what you sedate into paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread." The researchers shot him again, this time in the chest.
And that's a direct quote.
That is the Russian sleep experiment.
Whew! That was a ride.
Yep. So I'm going to put your mind at ease now.
Okay.
This is a creepypasta.
What?
Yeah, this was all made up. But it gathered so much traction that people really believed it. It was almost like the OG Slenderman.
Okay.
It's like so many people really, like there were whole conspiracy, like Reddit 4chan threads devoted to, this is what the government's keeping from us. This is all super legit. I mean, this was like probably the most well-known. That's why I was astonished you hadn't heard of it, because like this was the creepypasta of creepypastas for a while.
And with good reason. I will say I was going to say before you dropped that bomb on me, that was a very profound quote he gave. Did he sit there and write that for 15 days? And
after being awake for 15 days.
But now we know. I was going to say the best I can say after 4 days is...
Literally. Yeah, I think the most I say after like 3 days is just like, are you sure you're not mad?
That's a good one. I've said that too.
Okay, so...
I don't mean to be the way that I am.
I'm sorry, you should
slept.
leave. Yeah. Yep. So, in the original story, people die and then, like, they aren't dead, and the researchers either do or don't monitor their oxygen and know if they're alive. It isn't written super well. It kind of reads like most creepypastas with, like, that slightly fan fiction type, just like, and then they all died, but, like, I forgot how many people I wrote into the beginning of this story. So there's kind of some loose threads. Also, people can't just leave vital organs on the ground and then get them just like stuffed back in like it's no big deal, as your stepfather has learned oned once things are
the tip
not
of the markers.
Yeah, once things are not on your body, it's hard to make them part of your body once again. You can't just chuck them on the floor for like a couple days and then be like, you can put these in now, right?
Yeah, I guess my brain skipped over that part.
Yeah. Well, when you're in the
I just assumed that they weren't able to replace all the organs.
Yeah, well, and I think like the way that creepypastas work when they're well done or when they're as encapsulating as this one is that it makes you forget that and omit the logic that your brain's like, wait, that's not how that works. But like you're so enthralled by the story that you're like, yeah, keep going. So for some reason, this story has kind of like, especially like I said a while back, blown up with a cult following. Some people who like say that maybe it could be based on truth, and they argue that the gas is what allowed these men to survive what otherwise would have killed them out of shock or blood loss. But the thing of it is that this story is not found anywhere except within the context of scary fiction. There's no scholarly journals on this. There are no documented interviews, nothing that suggests that this is real. It only exists within kind of the spookier side of the internet. It also isn't possible for the human body to stay awake and alive for 15 days straight. So even if they did have this great stimulant that was able to make them not sleep, the human body shuts down regardless. Like your nervous system shuts down. So it's just not possible. So like I said earlier, the troops during World War II definitely were hopped up on amphetamines. But the thing of it is that they were only able to stay awake for a day or two total. The Pentagon has actually done studies on this, and they found out that after being awake for a day or two, cognitive function is just simply too slow for soldiers to be reliable, and it renders them useless.
Absolutely. What have we been saying?
Exactly.
Look, when I do 4 days no sleep, usually when I say no sleep, I've gotten like an hour or two, maybe 3 tops in a night, but not consecutively. And the function, it just goes out the frickin' window.
Yeah, I mean, I even like tried to go as far as like I know I shouldn't drive.
Oh, absolutely not.
I mean, they're not joking. Like, do not operate heavy machinery. Like, when you are in that impaired state, it's the same as being drunk. Your reaction time is as slow as being intoxicated.
Absolutely, it is.
There's a kitty. Hi, kitty. So I think that this story gains so much traction because of how believable it is. We all kind of have this inherent distrust in our own government when it comes to secrets. And I know, like, you kind of mentioned, like, how do I feel as someone who is married into the military lifestyle? I mean, yeah, we all have that, like, ooh, what's it, Area 51 kind of concept of, like, I think that most of us, especially those of us kind of given to liking conspiracy theories or having those kind of beliefs, you know, we're already kind of more likely to do that. But then you throw in like World War II era when we've got this like Indiana Jones vibe happening that we're all conditioned to believe, and it's in Russia. Like, you know, you have this like, oh yeah, of course they did that stuff, because we do know that horrific experiments did happen in that era. I mean, Joseph Mengele, the angel of death, did absolutely horrific things to the people who were incarcerated in concentration camps, and those experiments were absolutely deplorable. I think about the people who
think about the Russian cosmonauts that were just sent up into space, never to return again.
Absolutely. And the people who made discoveries about anatomy and healthcare by doing procedures and experiments on Black people enslaved in America. I mean, especially with like obstetrics and gynecological healthcare, those experiments are so beyond comprehension and how horrific they are, and they're true, that I think that it leads us to be more willing to believe that, oh yeah, well, if that thing could be true, if Joseph Mengele could be true, if the early roots of gynecological studies could be true, then why wouldn't the Russian sleep experiment be true too? It's not that much farther fetched than things that, like you said with the cosmonauts, like I've said with the other examples I've given, it's not that much of a further stretch.
Absolutely.
Which is, to me, the true horror in it all, is that it's like, cool, this one's not real, but how many will it take? Or like we were talking about earlier, like these were prisoners of war from a foreign country. Look how we treat our own prisoners in our country. Like, you have a perfect storm between prisoners, between people who aren't from the country of origin where the study was. And I mean, it's a perfect storm to have these completely inhumane conditions. So even though this story isn't true, I don't know, it kind of makes you think about the ones that are.
Absolutely, it does.
So that's the Russian sleep experiment.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that there are so many different types of horrors out there. Of course, there's the kind that we inflict onto ourselves, and then there's the kind that we are thrown in the midst of without any prior warning. And what I brought to the table this week is some eyewitness accounts and actual firsthand accounts of some tragedies that have happened.
Okay.
I think that it's really important that we talk about, we hear about historical events. Mm-hmm. And we hear them and we think about them being so long ago. And sometimes it's hard to relate.
Yeah.
So my first one's going to be about the Titanic. And I just wanted you to hear from someone who witnessed that firsthand and was a survivor of the Titanic, what that experience was like. Because as with your story, people are people.
Yeah.
And there's humanity in all sorts of tragedies. And I read this today and I was so overwhelmed because I had never heard a firsthand account of a tragedy of this nature. So shortly before midnight on April 14th, 1912, the RMS Titanic struck an iceberg roughly 400 miles off the coast of Newfoundland. 2 hours later, at 2:20 a.m., the ship sank with approximately 1,500 people on board. Now, I could get in, and we could do episodes on episodes of what went wrong with the Titanic, but chances are you're familiar with the casualties and the horrificness of this disaster. Mm-hmm. One of the items that survived the sinking of the Titanic was a first-hand account of a passenger that he had smothered away in his vest pocket. Wow. And it's very tragic, and it went on sale and auctioned off. The one that I'm going to read to you today is a letter that was written on official Carpathia stationery by first-class passenger Dr. Washington Dodge. Now, as we know, the Carpathia was the ship that came in and picked up the survivors of the Titanic as well as any bodies they were able to gather.
Right.
So after this man was rescued, he immediately went and wrote a first-hand account on stationery from the Carpathia what had happened. Dodge was a prominent doctor. He was a banker as well as a politician, and he was from San Francisco. He boarded the Titanic on April 10th with his wife Ruth and his son Washington Dodge Jr. His description of the sinking was written within days after the disaster as the Carpathia ferried the Titanic survivors to New Haven. Dodge's tale in particular begins at 11:40 p.m. when he and his wife were awakened by the ship's impact with the iceberg. Twice he went onto the deck and was told that there was absolutely no danger. This is a direct quote from him. Having been told that there was no danger and believing such to be the fact from the general conduct of the passengers and such officers, as I saw, I insisted my family remain in bed and await developments. Once more returning to the companionway, I asked our steward, who was standing there, as he had heard. He replied the order had just come down for all passengers to put on life preservers. So Dodge and his family quickly ascended to the starboard deck, and his wife boarded a lifeboat, and in particular lifeboat number 3, which was the second boat launched from the side of the ship. Dodge remained on the starboard side of the ship, and it was a decision which undoubtedly saved his life, because the majority of the passengers congregated on the port side of the ship. So, as the 5th officer started filling lifeboats on the starboard side of the ship, Dodge was able to secure a spot. I'm just going to jump right in now to reading an excerpt of his letter about his account. The officers in charge of loading the boats were cool and masterful, preventing as far as possible all disorder and enforcing the command to care for women and children first. When boat 13 was lowered to A deck to be loaded, I went to this deck. After 8 or 10 women had been placed on board, no further other women or children were within hearing distance to respond to the officer's call. A number of men then climbed over the rail into the boat when someone pushed me from behind and shouted, "Get in, doctor!" I climbed in, and in a few moments the boat was filled and orders given to be lowered. As we were lowered, boat 15, which had been loaded from the boat deck, was also being lowered. By this we were for a few minutes placed in a perilous position, which threatened our destruction. I'm going to stop here to bring up that classic scene in Titanic, James Cameron's Titanic, when the lifeboats are descending onto one another, because that's immediately what this situation makes me think of. We observed as we neared the water that our boat was being lowered directly into an immense volume of water thrown out from the ship's side by the condenser pump. On the Titanic, this was a stream about 3 feet in diameter, which was thrown with great force 6 or 8 feet from the ship. It would instantly have swamped our boat. To add to our anxiety, Boat 15 had swung directly over our heads, owing to the fact that the steamer had settled several feet into the water at her bow. Both boats were being lowered when our loud cries of warning were heard above, and the lowering of both boats arrested. We had no officer or seaman in our boat to direct us, but fortunately we were able to disengage our oar, and within it we pushed the boat from our boat, which overhung the threatening waters from the pump. 8 or 10 feet from the ship's side, when releasing the trigger, we dropped into the water and were at once swept away from the steamer's side by great force. The ocean being as calm as the waters of a smooth, flowing river, we rowed off to overtake the boat, having a lantern on board. We being unable to find one in our boat, having rowed about a fourth mile, we found ourselves in close proximity to 5 boats. We observed the closing incidents as the gradual submergence of the ship forward, the final extinguishment suddenly of all of her lights, the final plunge downward, as a shooting star full from the zenith visible nearly on the horizon. From this time until shortly after 4 p.m., in a sea gradually growing rougher, and with a temperature of extremely cold, we rowed about.
4 p.m. or 4 a.m.?
4 a.m., I believe.
Oh, okay.
From this time until shortly after 4 a. After he doesn't state directly in his quote.
Because that would be like 16 hours otherwise.
I don't know. I might have to look up and see what time the Carpathia actually arrived to rescue people.
Because, my God, that's a long night.
Yeah. The next eyewitness account I want to talk about is one of the last survivors from the Hindenburg.
Oh, wow.
And at 88, this was some direct quotes from him. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Hindenburg was Germany?
It was a whole country?
It was a country. The Hindenburg was an airship. Mm-hmm. I feel like everybody knows the Hindenburg.
I think so, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Okay.
Watch a History Channel program. That's not our job. Our job's to talk about it, not to tell you about it.
I could tell you about it, but once again, this would be a tragedy that could encompass episodes. Yeah. And I really want to focus on survivor stories right now. Mm-hmm. Okay, so on May 6, 1937, the father of 8-year-old Werner Dolmer headed to his cabin after using his movie camera to shoot some scenes for Lakehurst Naval Air Station from the airship's dining room. We didn't see him again, recalled Dolmer. He was, at the time of this interview, 88, and the only person left of the 62 passengers and crew that survived the fire that killed his father, sister, and 34 other souls. Dolmer and his parents, older brother and sister, were returning home from a vacation in Germany and had planned to travel on the 804-foot-long Hindenburg to Lakehurst, then to fly on to Newark and board a train in nearby New York City to take them home to Mexico City, where his father was a pharmaceutical executive. As the Hindenburg arrived at its destination, flames began to flicker on top of the ship, and hydrogen exposed to the air fueled an inferno. The front section of the Hindenburg pitched up, and the back section pitched down. Suddenly, the air was on fire. The rest I'll be telling you is his direct account. We were close to a window, and my mother took my brother and threw him out. She grabbed me and fell back and then threw me out, he said. She tried to get to my sister, but she was too heavy, and my mother decided to get out by the time the Zeppelin was nearly on the ground. It turns out his mother had broken her hip. I remember lying on the ground, and my brother told me to get up and get out of there. Their mother soon joined them and asked a steward to get her daughter, whom he carried out of the burning wreckage. A bus later took the survivors to an infirmary, where Donor said a nurse gave him a needle to burst his blisters, of which there were many.
Jesus.
From there, the family was taken to Point Pleasant Hospital. He had burns on his face, both hands, and down his right leg from the knee on. His mother had burns to her face, both legs, and both hands. His brother had several burns on his face and right hand. His sister unfortunately passed early the next morning. He remained in the hospital for 3 months before going to a hospital in New York City for skin grafts, and he was discharged in January. And at the time, he was a German speaker who had learned English. Mm-hmm. This is also a direct quote. Burns take a long time to heal, he said. Now, the family went on to return to Mexico City, where funerals were held for his father and sister, who were among the 35 fatalities of the 97 passengers and crew aboard the airship. Lots of people, including a worker on the ground, also passed. I want to go back to this quote where he said burns take a long time to heal, because this is part of the reason I wanted to cover survivor stories. No matter what you're going through in this world, time won't heal all wounds, but it certainly can make things better.
Yeah.
Here we are at a time in history where we're in a pandemic, where we're watching terrible things happen to people. We're watching people get sick. We're watching countries handle it different ways. We're watching politicians fight over what to do. And I thought stories of survivors are so important more now than ever, because even as we're facing these things, we will get past this.
Yeah.
Burns take a long time to heal, but as we forge on, we will survive. Now, unfortunately, many people aboard the Titanic and Hindenburg were not that lucky. And certainly in dealing with a pandemic, I don't equate that in any way to the sinking or air disaster. But I want you to know, no matter what personal battles you're fighting this week, burns take a long time to heal. Just keep fighting for survival, and we all got to fight to do the best we can.
Yep.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is this episode of Supposedly.
I love it. I think there's so many battles and so many burns right now that are healing very, very slowly. Burns within our own lives and on the face of our country. And, we talk about email us if you have a story to share, but also just email us if you need somebody to. I really, truly believe that the only way that we're going to get through everything that is happening right now is solidarity.
And dialogue.
Absolutely.
I think it's important to keep reminding each other that as we face extended quarantines, as we face disrupted routines, as we face police brutality and racial injustices and everything else that we're encountering as a nation, as individuals, as families on this level, that we have to just keep talking and communicating and trying to understand one another and hear one another out.
Yep.
Burns take a long time to heal, but with proper care, they can. You might still have scars, but they can.
Yeah. And a thing that, I've talked about it before. I live with mental health issues. I have depression, anxiety, you name it. And the thing that I have to remind myself a lot that may help some other people is you've made it through every single bad day you've ever had. There has not been a day so far that you've not seen the other side of. And even the days when the burns hurt and it feels really big, you've got this.
So thank you for listening to Supposedly. You can find us on supposedlypod@gmail.com. Please feel free to send us any stories that you may have or any topics that you would like us to cover. Our social medias are
at supposedlypod, at I forgot what they're all called, at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it.
And just thanks. Hang in there. And join us next time on
Supposedly.